All right, boys and girls. Let's let's see how this works. I'm Ken Ziska, and I'm at the controls. Let's see how this works. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. And I'm at the controls. So I also already tell that I had to turn off the microphone there. So, gang, if you're having issues, you think everything's crazy, it probably is. So, that's what I'm doing. I'm joined tonight um, by Ken Borowski and Randy Relander. And Randy's the assistant superintendent in the division, and Ken is one of our N scale experts. And we decided that what we wanted to do was talk a little bit about N scale tonight. And we found that last year when we did one of our TCD live Zoom meetings, there were people in the group that had N scale questions, and guys like myself that are not in N scale couldn't answer them. So we're trying to find all the people that we can get so that we can build our community of experts. So I see that Dan's model railroading journey couldn't join us tonight. He's going to have to catch us on the rebound. Tim D's here, Jeff Bursch, Caboose 121, and I've talked to him on the NMRA interchange. Brent Isaac, Brent. Hey, Brent, are you going to? He's another N scaler, as I recall. Tim Hamilton. Tim, are you related to that scoundrel Dave? And Eric Boone, of course, is here. So what we'd like to do, and Don's loves his N scale. So we'll keep an eye on chats, but we're just gonna kick this right off, and I'm gonna ask some silly questions because I want to know more also. So, Randy, why don't you give us a little bit of your background, what you're doing, and how N scale is part of your life? Oh, wait a minute.
I'm not hearing him.
There. Oh, what's going on here? Randy, you're muted.
All right, I'm muted.
There you go.
the typical problem. I was just saying I've been probably doing N scale for about 40 plus years, on and off, more off than on, more on lately, I guess. Grew up in Babbitt, Minnesota, north of Ely. My dad was a truck driver for Reserve Mining Company, and one of his best buddies was in the car shop up there. So got connections to the reserve system. Actually, my brother-in-law was a biologist down in Silver Bay too, on the other end of the outfit. Grew up in a small trailer house, so I had maybe about 8 by 8 foot room. So that kind of forced me, if I was going to be doing any modeling, it was pretty much nothing but N scale. Had a couple, probably 2 or 3 different stages of layouts in there, and then some of that traveled with us after we moved to Grand Forks. Went to Grand Forks to University of North Dakota for electrical engineering, and while we're out there, I got back into it a little bit. There's a community ed I was talking about on the Discord, that there's a community ed class that one gentleman from Grand Forks offered or taught the class, and I signed up for it and actually kind of kicked it off again. Then we moved down from Grand Forks to Chaska. Actually, we're down in St. Louis for a while looking for work, and then moved to Chaska, and I started out within industrial automation. So now I've been doing electrical engineering, computer science stuff for the last 30 some odd years.
Great. So we'll get back to this, but I'm interested in the evolution of N scale as a mechanically and electronically. But Ken, can you give us a little background?
Yeah, I'm originally from Chicago, so I grew up near the airport there. So trains and planes are all around my house all day long. So it's always been an interest to me. Moved to Minnesota in 1985, and that was when I actually built my first N-scale layout. I had some N-scale stuff as a kid, along with some HO stuff, but that was your basic, Bachman type of starter kit as a kid. You just set up in a circle on a table type of thing. But in '85, when I moved up here, working for Delta Airlines, Northwest prior to that, Republic prior to that. But '85, I moved up to the Minneapolis area, and I was able to get a house, and that was when I was able to do my first N-scale layout, and that was about that was when those articles were starting to come out in Model Railroad, or when they were doing the Clinchfield Railroad series. It seemed like back then too, there was just a whole bunch of articles in Railroad Model Craftsman and stuff about the Clinchfield. And for some reason that just stuck a nerve with me, and I just fell in love with it. So I actually built one of those Model Railroader layouts that they showed how to build in the magazine. I built the L-shaped one. That was it was the U-shaped one. That was part of like 4 different versions of that one. That was kind of a famous one that was brought around the country for different shows and that. But I did the U-shaped one when I was in my first home, when I first moved up to the Twin Cities area. And then eventually I got into a larger house and stuff. And the layout I've got now, which is about 22 years old, is in the basement of my current home. So that's kind of my N-scale history, but I'm still modeling the Clinchfield because changing over from one home to another, it just gave me the chance to kind of expand on what I had, because I was building, custom engines and cars and stuff, and I didn't want to change to something totally different. And this gave me more space to just make it basically bigger and better. And then I got involved with some of the historical societies with the railroad, and I met a whole bunch of people that worked for the railroad. I met all the guys that wrote all the books and articles that I was reading 10 years prior to. So it started to become an annual trip down to North and South Carolina every fall. And I'd end up rail fanning with all these guys that wrote all the books and did all the videos and stuff about the Clinchfield. So all got to be friends. And so I was able to get all sorts of information, meeting all these people down around the actual railroad now, which is all part of CSX now. But so that's kind of the quick version of how we got here.
Great. I'm going to start putting up some slides here, and then we'll see if we can make this work. Again, like I said, if we have too many technical difficulties, I'll blame it on Split Rock. But he had a tough week. He was down in Houston attending some training, and although I know he became the teacher's pet and he was the honor graduate, that's kind of a secondary thing here. So, as I understand it, in in N scale, there's lots of ways to get into it. You go down and buy your equipment at one of the local shops. And do all the shops here in town carry N scale?
Yeah, they do, but some of them have more in stock than other places. I guess Scale Model Supplies probably has the biggest inventory in town here. That's Lexington and University in St. Paul. They've got quite a large selection in there. But other than that, it's probably just Hub Hobbies, and then the rest of it's off the internet.
Okay. So as we get into T-Track, then there's different ways to build. I wanted to also point out that the NMRA has a special interest group, which is NRail, and you said that we have a local board member for NRail here in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Brett's on the call or not, but he's a local guy here in town that's part of their board of people that kind of talks about all the different guidelines and where they want to take the hobby and things like that. His name is Brett Isaacs. I don't know if he's on the call yet or not, but
Yeah, he's on chat.
Okay. So that's great. Just met Brett on the Discord, and so hopefully we'll get Brett to bring a little bit more of the N-Rail knowledge into the division, because I consider these to be great gateway drugs, if you will, into the hobby. So I wanted to show this picture just because how could you not show scales? And oh yeah. There's N scale. Sorry, that was cheap. When I got back in the hobby over 50 years ago, I looked at N scale, and at the time I had an issue with it because it was mostly Bachmann, and they had funny couplers on them, and the cars were all like 12 scale feet apart, and they all ran a code 80 rail, and I just it wasn't quite what I thought it should be. So Randy, when you got started, was it similar, or did you?
It was pretty much all the equipment that was available was pretty dicey. It was low detail, the big pie plate wheel sets, and the deep flanges. Some of them tried to improve their traction with traction bands on the wheels, and stuff never was really reliable. And those couplers are something else.
Yeah,
I believe those are actually put together or just decided on basically as a de facto manufacturing standard at the time, because nobody else had a better solution that was workable at that time as far as staying together and being able to manufacture the stuff. But those couplers were huge.
Yeah. So Randy, when did a better coupler show up?
The KD stuff, I think, was originally, I don't remember the time period of that. That's probably about the time I fell off the radar again. And I think by the time that I got really back into it and looking deep at it, the microtrains had split off from KD at that point.
Yeah, I think the mid 80s, I know for sure.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Because that's about when I was getting back
still a
into
lot
the
of
hobby.
people that were still using the Bachmann and the Rapido coupling systems.
So
it was more a luxury early on, I think.
So Ken, you thought mid 80s is when the KD couplers showed up?
Well, that was when I kind of got back into the hobby, and they were around then. I mean, you could still get both then. Nowadays, it's pretty much all the micro trains or the Accu mates are on most of the stuff now. But
yeah, now there's a lot of different ones. They're kind of fighting for different. I mean, Cato's got their own, and the McHenrys, and
is that right? So in
they all kind of work together, but they have issues talking to each other.
Okay. So, and of course the quality is improved, and you've got DCC also, right? A lot of DCC being used.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff now comes with it already on the locomotives. A lot of them you can get with sound nowadays too. Nowadays, it's a lot easier to put a decoder in a locomotive. That kind of made it so it's basically just plug and play now.
A lot of the decoders are just drop in. If you are putting something in there, they're custom made for the frames.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of locomotives on my shelf from the earlier days that you'd have to hardwire something into, but so you can still obviously do that, but it's a lot easier now with what they're coming out nowadays, where you can just buy something and kind of just drop it in there.
So in HO and S, you use a 1 amp decoder. Do you use a smaller decoder in N scale?
Some of them you can use in various scales because they make tiny decoders for HO locomotives too to put in the little switchers and things too, which would be like a normal size one for an
Okay.
N scale engine. So
Do you pay a premium price for an N scale decoder?
I think all that stuff is pretty similar in price because I think N scale engines are just as expensive as an HO engine. I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference in price on that end.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
And if it's not pre-installed, it's difficult to find space in a lot of those frames, especially if you're looking to put sound in there, and then you got the other issues too.
Yeah, the Loke Sound decoder is kind of my favorite one now because the sound on those are really nice, and that's I think one of the nicer ones out there.
Are you using phone speakers, or what are you using for speakers?
Oh, the one I've got, I mean, the speakers on the decoder. I didn't add anything to it.
I didn't realize it came with the speakers on them.
I've got a scale trains locomotive that came with the sound in it already, so they might have done something to it. I haven't taken it apart, and I had one installed in a locomotive where I didn't add a speaker to it. It was just the speaker off of the decoder, and it sounds great. So
cool. So now let's kind of get into the what we see in the NMRA as far as the modelers in the division. We have modelers that have started building T-track, and I know Randy, you've got some T-track. A year ago, the division made 24 of them and gave them or sold them very inexpensively to guys in the division. And here's an example of them set up at the modelers meet.
I think Art did a lot of that, didn't he? I don't even know who built those up.
Yeah, Art and Ron Olson both did a lot of that.
Oh, okay.
And so you can see Art's got some modules there, and I think so does Ron. Some of those are his. Dave Hooley also had some T-tracks, but we've seen those at the modelers meet. Do you know? Are there any T-tracks that get set up at local hobby shows?
Well, one of the main clubs in town here is called GRVS. I think their website is grvs.org, and they do numerous shows throughout the year. Some of the guys in the group travel to other cities, and they do T-track, they do N-track, and some of the members have 1-track.
Okay.
Usually, some of the like one-day shows or some of the quick setup type shows, they'll just bring the T-track stuff too. But there's a couple shows a year. One at Randolph, Minnesota, and the one at Shakopee is where we would set up all 3 different types. We would do the 1-track, the N-track, and the T-track.
Okay, Randy, this is your setup. Can you kind of walk me through what you've got here?
It's basically 4 modules up front with kind of a modified time saver built into them. As much as I both like and dislike the time savers, and then there's a small passing sighting on the back. It's the whole thing is wired up for block detection, and I've got it running under JMRI, so with scripts to automatically move the through freights back and forth. So theoretically, you could actually operate the time saver and have the through freights automatically schedule themselves and move through the foreground while you're messing around on the switching section.
Okay, so in the front here, you say we see 4 modules, and then the N modules. That's something different, right? So there's actually an N module on either end, and so what kind of? Go ahead.
Well, say there's the 4 curve modules on the ends, and then the pretty much standard modules elsewhere. Other than none of these are Other than the curve modules, all of them have either turnouts or extra track on them.
Great. So what kind of, is there a standard for what track you use on T-Tracks?
T-Track is all Kato or the Unitrack stuff.
Mhm.
And there's a standard for the separation from the first track to the edge, I think is like 2 inches. And then there's a fixed distance, I don't remember what it is, 20 some odd millimeters to the next rail. And then there's jigs and fixtures and stuff you can use to line those up.
Okay, so it's
I
all
built
standardized.
all these. Yeah, I built all these on my own based off the standards. And when I brought them over to the regional convention in Brainerd, they worked fine with the rest of them.
Great.
When I make
So-
pictures of the underside, all the wiring underneath is on screw terminals, so it's kind of my own wiring scheme to get working with block sensors and stuff.
Okay.
And once again, moving back to that Brainerd convention, I shoved a lot of this stuff on the back of the layout so we could put those other contest modules up front. They're those people's choice T-Track displays.
Great.
We
I
had-
know they're going to have T-Track People's Choice Awards also at the TLR convention this May. So if somebody's working on a T-Track module, they're sure welcome to bring it along.
I think we had about a couple dozen modules altogether. So
We did.
about 12 across the back and 12 across the front.
Okay, so I've got some more specific questions. From the left, that first module, maybe it's a coal loader or something, and then the
That's
one next to it.
All of these, actually, part of the reason that I started putting these things together was my collection of Cornerstone module, or those Walther's Cornerstone kits, was getting out of hand, so I had to have some place to display them.
Okay.
So on the left is a Glacier Gravel. The center one is Vulcan Metal something or another. And then the two on the end are the Superior Paper Company.
Okay. The one there, have you done anything more than just painting and ballasting the track?
There's, I think at this stage with these photos, it was pretty much just coat of brown paint and
Okay.
ground foam on top of that.
Okay.
But and not all of them are ballasted. I think at this point only that one with Vulcan, the brown, that second one is ballasted.
Okay. Well, it still looks it looks really nice. It's a nice setup, and I know, as you mentioned, there were a bunch of them at the regional convention, and they looked really neat. So, and there you are running it, and you show on the computer, you show that you're running it with the JMRI.
Yep, and I don't know if I can't see that close, but I think the white square on my screen there in the upper left-hand corner, I believe that's the scripts that are running to.
Okay.
Basically, they ran around and then automatically, or well, at random, pick the next train after a random amount of time, so that it kind of parked themselves in the back of the layout, and there'd be a random delay, and then one of the trains would be selected next to go around the layout, and then it would, align the turnouts and send it around.
Okay. Yeah. So that you could have one train, like I said, on the outer loop, you could have different trains coming and going at different times while you're switching your time saver.
Right. And that was kind of the intent of why I went that route with the block detection and stuff.
Okay.
And then on the right on the screen is CTC. It looks like a CTC. It's not a full CTC panel.
Okay.
But all the turnouts are controllable from the screen, and there's indicators on the panel when the blocks are occupied.
Okay.
I don't have resistor wheel sets on any of the cars, so it's just picking up on the power draw through the locomotive. Whenever a locomotive's sitting drawing power through in the section, that gets picked up.
Okay.
Current sensors, basically.
Neat. Okay, and now we're going to jump right over, Ken, to your layout.
Yeah, this is kind of the scene you see as you come down the stairs into the basement. So this is, I guess, what I call the main layout room. There's another room way in the back there. You can see where there's a guy standing back there in a kind of a red shirt past the doorway. There's another room back there. And then just a little bit off, well, I guess it would be kind of at the back of the guy in the blue shirt. There's another room over there, which is where my staging yards are, and a little bit more of the layout. So it basically fills up 3 rooms. But there's a lot to see in this picture. If you look above the doorway in the back, there's a fast clock up there. And then if you see that black box up near the ceiling in the back, that's actually a closed circuit TV, because my dispatcher is usually upstairs on a different level. So he can actually kind of look at the layout room and kind of see where some guys are and stuff. If they don't call them how they're supposed to, he can kind of have a rough idea where some trains are if they're not talking as much as they should be. And then if you look at the layout, if you notice there's no legs under the layout, I purposely built it that way because I wanted to have kind of a cleaner look to the room with a finished area under the layout. It's all trimmed out. There's carpet down there. There's no, I guess I'll just call it stuff under the layout that everybody seems to put under their layouts, which I had under there for a while too. But my finished product, I wanted to be more of a kind of a finished room look about it. And then I've got the fascia painted black because to me, it makes the greenery and everything kind of pop out more. The walls are painted with just a basic, background scene that I got out of a model railroader magazine 20 years ago. I think it was Dave Frary, I think, had an article about doing scenery way back when. You can see there's car cards being used. You can see there's an old DC panel in the front there that had the rotary knobs on it. The white sign hanging down at the front at the bottom of the first, at the page there. Now it's all a DCC, but I left some of the panels up just because it gives the track diagram for that area. You can also see that the tops of the mountains are roughly about 6 feet tall. So the average person's not going to see over the top of the hill. The one guy in that orange shirt, he's like 6'7", so he's taller than most people. But the average person's going to only see one scene at a time with the mountains kind of separating the scenes. Everything's labeled. You can see there's stickers on the fascia that show mile markers, what each area the layout is called, what the name of the city or town is. So yeah, just one photo like that gives you a whole lot to look at.
Yeah, now we're going to get into some detail shots, but I think one of the things that I see in this photo that is really impressive to me is there's a train in the town, and it's dwarfed by the scene around it.
Yeah, that's one thing nice about N scale is you can separate your scenes a little bit, so you're not just going from for one example, let's say a T track, you've got each little module might have a different scene on it, where this way you can kind of stretch it out a little bit, so you have some running room from town to town, which gives you more of the illusion where you're actually getting somewhere. Sure.
So let's here's another scene that I think shows that feeling of being dwarfed by the scenery around you.
Yeah, this is a prototypical scene. This is actually the Copper Creek Trestle. The Southern Railway had the line at the bottom, and the Clinchfield had the line at the top. And it just fit that space really, really good. So I wanted to have a nice big bridge scene in there because the Clinchfield had 55 bridges, and so I wanted to make sure I had a couple of big steel bridges on the layout, and that fit that space really good.
How long is that steel bridge, Ken? Is it about 2 feet, or does it go around the corner to the right?
It goes, I think, one more, well, not pillar, but Brutman holding it up.
Yeah.
So it goes a little bit more to the right. It's about 3 feet long, I think, roughly.
Wow. Wow.
But that
And-
scene now has got trees growing up all around that line on the bottom. So the trees are almost just as tall as the bottom of that trestle nowadays, where the era that I'm modeling is like mid 1970s. So the trees on the lower level were a lot shorter then. So that's the scene that I modeled from that time frame.
Wait a minute now. You say if you went out to look at the railroad, the trees would be taller?
If you went there today and looked at that same scene, you probably wouldn't even see that track on the bottom
Okay.
because the trees would be blocking it.
Okay.
And then the trees would be tall enough where they'd be almost up to the track level for that track on the top.
Wow. See, you had me worried because I thought maybe the trees on your layout were growing. And if we took this scene today, your trees would have grown up. I was going to be really
No,
impressed
I
by
don't like
that.
making trees. I've made way too many trees. I'm tired of making
Replace them
trees.
based on a real time clock.
Yeah. 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 That's pretty cool. Okay. There we go. So again, now this shows you, to me, really nice detail. And again, instead of stepping back, now we're getting down. Do you have your layout set up so that you can get down? And I like to put my chin on the railroad and watch trains go by. Do you have spots where you can rail fan like that?
Yeah, just like the real railroad, the way the trees and stuff are, and actually the real railroad is cursed with telephone poles that are on the side where the rail fan's usually at. So
Yeah.
of course I had to put one of the cursed telephone poles in the way there. But one thing, well, my layout's roughly about 45 to 52 inches tall, depending on where you're at. And one thing that I notice a lot of people don't always do, which is important, if you went back to the very first picture of the whole layout room, you can see that I put negative space, I think is what you call it, in front of the track. So there's stuff, between the fascia and the track. So a lot of people tend to put their track right to the edge of their board, let's say, or their module. And it gets really tough to take a picture or to rail fan it because the track is right to the edge of what you're doing, and you can't get a good camera angle on it because usually you're going to be at ground level taking a photo. Very rarely you're going to be up above it shooting down. So that's one thing to keep in mind too when you're building something, is to have that space, between you and the track, so you can have it slope down a little bit.
Neat idea. Neat idea. So again, like you said, you're down here at track level. You're able to watch the trains come right at you.
Yeah, all the scenes on my layout are based on prototypical scenes. It's hard to see in this picture, but that train's coming out of a tunnel, which is a Brushy Creek tunnel. And that's Cane Creek Bridge that it's crossing over right there where the second engine is. And it's in the turn to a town called Tocane, which is how that name of that creek, that was the Cane Creek, and then the Tow River is just to the left. So where the two came together, they named the town Tocane after the two waterways there where they merged. And this one shows a little bit of detail. It's got the wipers on there. It's got the sunshades. It's got some weathering. It's got the MU hoses. It's just your basic, woodland scenics, clump foliage, and ground foam. I do have a whistle sign there. That's the backside of it by the bridge there.
Yeah.
That's actually a whistle sign because there's a grade crossing coming up around the curve there where the train's coming into town. I don't have any of the wires strung on the poles because that's a little bit too much. This is actually a car that I did based off of a prototype picture that I had. This car is actually made out of pewter. It was made by a company that did a run at Quinchfield flat cars about 15 years ago, and they were each numbered. I think they did maybe 100 or 150 cars. I think I've got 6 or 7 of them, and that's an all metal car, which is nice because when you get into flat cars and things like that in N scale, you don't have a whole lot of room to put extra weight on them. So being a metal car was nice, and I just used different types of pastel type chalks to weather the top of it to give it that wood look. So
Yep.
so that's actually an all metal top to the deck on the car there.
Very effective.
And then the track is
Go ahead.
track is code 55 micro engineering track, and that's just your basic woodland scenics, various colors of soil and ground foam and things along that line.
Did you do any handling in there, Ken, or
What's that?
have you done any handling on the layout in there, or?
No, that's all flex track there. And then I painted the rails.
Yeah,
like
that micro engineering stuff is nice.
Yeah, I've got some Alice stuff too, but at the time when I was building this, micro engineering was the only manufacturer that was making code 55. 20 years ago when I was laying that track. Now Atlas does a line of code 55, which is, just as nice. But back in the day, that was all you had for an option.
You said Alice? What? I've
Atlas.
never heard of that one. Oh,
Atlas.
Okay. I thought I said Alice.
No, so Atlas and Micro Engineering are the two manufacturers for code 55 track.
Great.
If you want to go that route.
Okay. So code 55, you say, is what you're using. That's pretty small stuff. So I want to go back and you've got something else that we want to talk about, your trips on it with your Fremo. But let's see what the group's doing here. Hopefully we've got a lot of other N scalers out there, and so we'll see ourselves get some good questions there. Chris is checking in from Madison. Chris, we are having our Thousand Lakes Region Convention here in Minneapolis, and I'm looking for somebody from the Madison area NMRA to get in contact with. So if you've got a good contact name, I'd appreciate that. And then, so Eric Boone is talking about, he's done a couple T-Trax modules. Eric moved from the Twin Cities down to Florida, and he's our resident 3D expert. So I don't know if he's started doing any freight cars in 3D. That'd be pretty cool. Hello to Wigwag Workshop. And
one thing I can add too is Brett Isaacs, who's on the list here.
Yep.
Who's following today. He actually does 3D printing as well. I did a whole train full of wood chip cars that he did for me, and I had some custom decals made from Circuit City to model the CSX era transition that I do for my Fremo module. So Brett Isaacs has a company called Baldylocks Designs that a lot of people have been buying stuff from him for N scale.
Yep. I've looked at that, and I'm hoping he'll bring that to the modelers meet. I think that'd be pretty interesting if he could bring that down and show us what he's doing. And Brett shared with us the NRail organization, which I appreciate that. It's nice to have that. And this, Don, I think you're getting to the point that I was talking about. This was before KDs and micro trains, and boy, it was. I went back to American Flyer. Let's just put it that way.
I think it was called like the postage stamp train set or something.
Yes, it was. That's right.
That just kind of came to me all of a sudden. But
Yep, you're right. Dwight at North Star asks, "What about OO?" And I guess maybe we'll have to find somebody that can tell us about OO, but I really can't help you out with that. So here's a good, Brett again is TT, yeah. So, but yet I know there's people still making new things in TT, so that's cool. So this will be on the when it gets back up on the YouTube to look at. You can go in and get the history of N scale couplers. That's kind of interesting. Caboose 121 tells us that anything nowadays is pretty well a drop in. So, okay. And see, I buy what they call HO scale for my S scale, and that's right around what the price range are. And this is one of those things that Brett talks about, the cell phone or the sugar cube speakers. You use the speaker that comes right on the decoder, Ken?
Yeah, I've got some Digitrax ones that have sound, and I've got some MRC ones that have sound, and those all had speakers right on the actual decoder. I had a hobby shop install the Loke Sound one that was put in my engine, so I don't know what they did on that, but I don't believe you need to add one to it, but I think you can if you want to make it a little bit more bassier sounding. But the one I've got on the two engines I own sound really good to me. So maybe somebody else that's following can chime in on that, because I don't really know.
Yeah. So Don mentions that in St. Louis they've got a club that does entirely N-track and T-track. They do 6 shows a year. I don't think we have that many shows, do we, guys? Oh, we have that many flea markets, but we don't have nearly that many train shows.
We used to have a bunch. GRVS used to do about a dozen shows a year. There used to be one in Menominee. There used to be one at the Civic Center downtown St. Paul. Now that kind of comes and goes. Now it's the River Center show. There was one in Eau Claire that we do. We go down to La Crosse. They do the one in Shakopee. They do the one in Randolph. So there's one up in St. Cloud that we would do. There's one in Duluth we would do. Some of them would go up to Thunder Bay and do a show up there. So there was about a dozen shows, but there's really only 2 or 3 that are local to the Twin City area now. You know, the other ones you had to travel, maybe 2 hours to get to, roughly.
Yeah. Now, Randy put that comment in. If I didn't introduce it carefully enough, would you have guessed that was Clinchfield? You certainly wouldn't have guessed that was any. To me, it had to be Coal Country.
Yeah,
it's just beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty
it's like
scenic.
right out of the model railroader magazines from the time period you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and Ken, you brought up this point about why you like that pewter flat car is it was you could get good weight on it, but and I think in all scales. Go ahead.
Yeah, so what I've done with some of my other flat cars and lighter cars, I've just gone to Walmart and bought just fishing lead weights, and just cut them in split them in half, or made them smaller, or either squeezed them with a pair of pliers to get them to fit, and I just glued them to the underside of whatever types of cars, especially like a flat car where you don't want to obviously put it on the deck. There's really no other place to add any weight to it, is only to the bottom. So I filled all those little areas under the bottom of the car with just squished pieces of lead weights and glued in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I saw that softer lead over at Hub Hobby the other day. Supposedly you can mold it to whatever shape with your
yeah, I've
fingers.
seen somebody heat some stuff up too, and they poured it in, and it gets hot. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And I got to have this one here. Go S scale. So you see, we're talking N scale, but we did manage to find one other S scaler in the world. We know there's 8 of us in the world, Ned. So it's nice to have you pop on in. I want to go back and because Ken was telling us earlier about his N-track, and he's a member of the Minnesota N-trackers. So let's let's go back here. See how I can figure out how to do this. Yeah, there we go. And there you go. So Ken, tell us about this trip.
This was a Fremo trip. So that's a whole nother one to throw into the mix here. You've got Fremo as well. So you've got T-Track, you've got N-Track, you've got One Track, and then you've got Fremo. And this was an event that it wasn't this past summer, so it must have been 2021. The Fremo group rented out, this is in Evanston, Wyoming. So they rented out a Union Pacific old car shop here, or diesel shop. I'm not sure what building this was, but that was the building we were in. And if you look in the background, there was a whole bunch of other buildings back there too. There's actually a roundhouse and some other buildings too that have all been refurbished. And they use it for a bunch of different events and stuff. So they're just beautiful on the inside. And this town is like in the middle of nowhere with nobody living in it. So I don't know where they got all the money to refurbish all these buildings, but they did. But they're really nice. And they rented this building out for 4 days. So it was a 4-day event. And people came from, I think it was 18 or 20 different states. And they brought their Fremo modules. And we set up, it was close to 450 modules. And I think there's another picture that shows the inside of the building that kind of shows, that's kind of that's like 1/4 of the building on the inside there. So it took roughly 6 hours to run a train around if you went down all the different legs and sections and through all the junctions and stuff. But that was a big Fremo meet, and they're going to do another one in 2024, same town, Evanston, the same building, and they actually want to rent 2 of the buildings. They want to rent the roundhouse as well, because they've invited everybody, which is kind of what the whole N-Rail thing is about. It used to be called N-Track, and it's kind of morphed into N-Rail. And the whole point of it is to try to get everybody talking on the same page, because we all model N scale. We all buy the same engines. We all buy the same cars. We all use the same manufacturers. We all do the same scenery. But it's like if you're a Fremo guy, you don't want to talk to the T-Track guy, and the T-Track guy doesn't want to talk to the N-Track people. It's like, hey, we're all doing the same thing. Let's all have this big meet out in Evanston, Wyoming, and everybody bring what you got, and we'll just make these big layouts. They're going to put, the Fremo guys in one building and the N-Track guys in another building and the T-Track guys in another building, and everybody can meet each other and see what each other's doing, and kind of have a whole big weekend out of it. So that's coming up in 2024. But this particular layout was a Fremo layout, and Fremo's basically got its own standards. It's a little bit higher off the ground. The track height is 50 inches off the ground, and most of the modules have a single main line, but they've updated some of the standards now, where if you're going to do a double track main line, they've got standards now so that different people's modules will match up right, because that's the whole point of the modules. You got to be able to match up with another guy from another part of the country. That's the whole point of standards. And so that's been a new revision in the last year and a half for the double track, if you have a double track railroad that you're modeling. And it's a little bit higher off the ground. It's more, people tend to model more prototypical scenes per se. They'll have photographs of different areas, and they'll try and do all the actual track diagrams and buildings, and a lot of them have signals on them and things along that line. Brett Isaacs, who's on the call here, he's actually on the board there that is part of the steering committee for the Fremo group, so he might be able to answer some more questions too. But if you're not doing nothing, 2024, go to the Fremo national website and you can get some info on that. Should be a fun time.
Yeah, I wanted to go back. I think Brett put on someplace here. Brett gave us the N-Track website, and I understand from talking to the guy that's in charge of the standards committee for the NMRA that they're trying to get the they're trying to get standards codified for the different groups, and I think they're trying. If I'm right, and Brent can tell us that, they're going to do that under the under NRail. So.
Yeah, it's all positive stuff. It's just trying to get everybody on the same page with stuff. And, you know, even though you model something that's a little bit different from the other guy, you're all still modeling N scale. So why can't everybody talk to each other and share, you know, weathering techniques or whatever you want to do, or, you know, how to do a decoder installs or modeling different things.
As I say, I saw an interesting adapter module, I guess you call it, at the Oklahoma City show. They had the T-track modules down at tabletop level, and then N-track modules at normal N-track height. And what they did was they had an adapter that went between the T-track module into a helix up to the N-track level. Thought that was kind of cool as far as interoperability goes.
So you're saying though, Randy, they had to actually have ramps in between?
It was a helix that went from the
okay.
tabletop level T-track into like a 2-3 layer helix up to the N-track level.
Okay. Well, that's pretty impressive. And I don't know, we talked a little earlier, I'll have to find out. My understanding is we're going to try to have T-tracks, N-tracks, and HO or N and HO Fremos for people to see again, so you can learn. And I know at the modelers meet, they're going to have one Fremo module under construction there, so you can come and sit and see how the modules work. And so I've tried. I told you I'm new at the controls. I've tried to figure out how to do a drawing, and we'll save it for next time. But StreamYard has something on that you can type in a special code, and then at the end it'll have a random generator and it'll pick one number. So next week, what we're going to do is we'll run this contest, and we'll show it early on. You type in the contest phrase to win, and at the end we'll draw and award a free registration to either the modelers meet or to the convention for any NMRA member. So I think there's somebody here from Arkansas. So when you do me a favor, when you win, you can come and stay at Tom's house. That's no problem. But I appreciate the conversation, guys. We'll come back and take some more questions. But for right now, I just want to go back and cover some key events that are happening. Emphasis for Fremo is branch line operations, realistic scenery, and point to point instead of continuous running. Okay. So again, to my one step back, I can see you have three different ways that you can enjoy the N-scale hobby: the T-track, the N-rail or N-track, and then the Fremo. So
yeah, yep.
And that's pretty cool because what I've seen in other divisions is you have families where you have a couple of young kids that are both making their own T-track, and they become very very personalized with them. In some cases, they get a little carried away, and you have space aliens on one and haunted mansions on the next one. But it's great because the kids get a chance to use their creativity, and then who knows where it'll end up. It might end up there, the next Clinchfield. That could be.
Yeah. I think you can even buy like a T-track little starter kit that shows you how to build it, or gives you all the materials to build it to get you started. So that's a good way of getting kids into the hobby. And that's the reason why it's, so low to the ground too. It's usually set up on a table so that smaller kids can come up and check it out, which is
Okay.
kind of the opposite of where the Fremo end of it is. Fremo's a little bit higher up off the ground. It's at 50 inches, and it's more prototypical modeling specific scenes and branch line switching type stuff. So it's kind of, it's all fruit, but it's kind of apples and oranges,
Sure. So Brett tells us the Cato has an all-in-one kit. And Ken, are you familiar with that kit?
I think that's the one that I'm referring to. I think
Okay.
I've seen it advertised somewhere where you can basically buy all the materials you need to get started.
Okay, great. Okay. And then of
See,
course
but that's the thing
this is-
too. And like, for like T-Track, a lot of people think, you just make your one little, I believe it's 12 by 12 inch module, but a lot of people will put 2 or 3 or 4 of those 12-inch modules together and they'll model one bigger scene. You can model a big freight yard too. You can model a big industry that has multiple tracks going to one industry. All because it's a 1 foot square module doesn't mean you can't put a bunch of them together that all make one bigger scene. So that's something you can do.
The modules themselves can be a lot longer than the 12 inches or
Right.
whatever it is too. It's,
Right,
it's,
yeah.
it's units.
They
from
just
so
they
many
just go
millimeters.
together as a group to make one bigger scene. Yep.
I think it's in
Oh.
units of that smallest piece of straight unitrack.
So, okay, I just want to make sure I understood. So you can make, there's a box that comes this way, but it's okay if you make your box twice as long as it's 2 exact units.
And twice
No.
as deep too, if you want.
Oh, okay.
Well, you can
As,
put a
as long
bunch of
as long
12.
as the layout can be expanded further back.
Well, you can put a bunch of your 12-inch boxes together to
Right.
form one bigger scene, not just
Yep.
have a bunch of individual.
That's
smaller
kind of what
scenes.
I did with mine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And Tim's got an interesting question here.
Well, I've
So-
done the ones where you've had to hardwire them into, and I've done the ones where you basically take out the board that's in there and just slide in the new board. So obviously that's the way to go, if you can, is to buy something where you can just swap out decoder boards. But you can make, hardwire an older locomotive, but you might have to grind down a little bit of the inside metal chassis to make room for it, because it's not really made for a decoder per se. But that's something that's doable. Obviously, it's just a little bit more work.
Okay. Well, that's again the kind of thing that I don't know, Tim. Oh, you were in Nashville, weren't you? Come on up to the modelers meet, because there'll be lots of smart modelers there, and we can have people help you when you're up there. That's the whole advantage of the modelers meet. Eric tells us that the lengths are multiples of 310 millimeters. So,
Sounds right.
yep. And here's bad news for Tim. So, sorry to say that. So let me go back over the schedule for everybody. February 9th, which is a couple weeks from now, the Twin City Division will have a Zoom meeting, and we'll send out the invites on MailChimp. So we don't put it in a lot of different places, because as you saw last time when we did it, somehow or another the bots always find you, and we had somebody trying to pick a fight with me. He said he'd come over and kick my ass.
He's very polite about it though.
He was, yeah. I think it was the S scale sign that did it. Yeah. I'm gonna kick your ass, sir. Yeah, but so if you just send a note to info at TCD, it's right off our website, and we'll make sure that you get an invite for it. So it'll be February 9th at 7 o'clock, and we'll have a presentation, and then we'll do some sharing of screens where you can show us pictures of what you're doing. Um, then March, 1 month later, March 10th and 11th, is the Twin City Division Modelers Meet. And that's in Plymouth, Minnesota. And registration forms are on, if you go to the TCD NMRA website and go to the Eventbrite, the registration is all right there. Very easy to do. Then April 21st and 22nd, we're going to have TCD operational retreat. We're looking for 21 people, and we've got some nice layouts already volunteered. This is open to NMRA members. And yeah, that's Eric's right. We go to Eventbrite to hide the Zoom link. It's open to NMRA members. You don't have to be in the Twin Cities division. We don't really worry about where the division boundaries are. So anybody within the sound of my voice that wants to come and spend some time here in the Twin Cities, we've got some great layout stop rate. It's a great way to get your feet wet in operations and also meet some great operators. Then 1 month after that, we are going to be busy this spring. The TLR convention is going to be in Bloomington, Minnesota, and you can see it's scrolling right in front of you right now. Registration is now open, and if you go to the Best Western Hotel, they've got special rates for you, which is pretty cool. And then the last but not least, the NMRA National is 21st to the 26th in August, and I'm certain that we're going to see a lot of N-scale Fremos and T-tracks and everything down there. But so that's going to be pretty cool. Chris Bell, Central Iowa, is so there's evidently active T-track group down there. So Chris, come on up and bring some stuff up and show us what you're doing down there, because I think, as Ken mentioned earlier, these guys like to travel and put on bigger shows, and I think that's pretty cool. And yeah. Oh, okay. Here's a tough question. I can't answer this one. Will they allow N scale? I hope so. I hope so. Here's another one for everybody from Chris, the Mad City Model Railroad Show and Sale. And Chris, if you get us a link to that, we'd love to share that on our Facebook page.
That's actually a pretty big show. A lot of vendors there, a lot of layouts are at that one.
Yep. Yeah, I've been down to that. It's one of the ones that I like to go to because it's only about a 4-hour drive. It's on as I recall, the west side of Madison. Mm-hmm. So, and then so that's pretty cool. And what else we got here? I'm assuming that's for the Madison show. Good. I'll click that and I'll put that on our Facebook page. So that's great. Well, we're going to leave you with that burning question that here. If everything's bigger in Texas, will they allow N scale? I think part of the answer is going to be that if they allow N scale, it'll have to be a pretty big setup. So that's probably what it's going to end up being. And that sounds like Brent's probably thinking of going down there. So next week on Friday night we'll be on again, and then the following week we have our Twin City Division Zoom meeting. Look forward to seeing you there, and make sure when you come to the Zoom meeting, you have some pictures that you can share. We'd like to see what's on your workbench, what you're doing. The modelers meet then is in March. The operations retreat is in April. The Thousand Lakes Convention is in May. And just a quick thing about that, and we'll introduce more about it next week. The Kennedy, our Thousand Lakes Region Contest Director, has put out a special challenge for people to scratch build a billboard and bring it to the convention as a People's Choice Award. And I started looking at some of the crazy things you could do. And of course, I came up with the copper tone billboards. You probably remember those, or the Back to the Future billboard, or a billboard with a cop hiding behind it. Maybe a billboard with a roadrunner going by in front and the coyote in the back. So, of course, you can do something silly or you can do something serious. So start thinking about that. You'll see on our Facebook, we're going to put out more information on that, and of course, the national. So that's all. That's all. Looks like a lot of fun. Anybody else? Ken, you have anything final you'd like to share with people about why N scale is the best?
Well, I like it just because you can, really stretch things out and make trains look a little bit more realistic going from one point to another. It just gives you that option to have more running time in between one town to the next.
Okay. And Randy, you're actually scratch building in N scale.
Yeah, that actually started. Actually, can I present quick?
Yeah, please do. I think.
See if I guess still got my picture here.
See, now you're asking me to do something that I don't know how to do. Oh, there we go.
Let's see if I can find it here.
Don't sing.
Shirley says don't sing. This is actually me scratch building in about 1979-ish, 78 maybe.
Wow.
This is the trailer house, the front room, living room. So it's probably about 14, 15 in that picture, I think. That one, I think that it was a coaling tower or some sort of nonsense or some sort of hopper that dropped something into hopper cars. That was scratch built in N scale with balsa, I think, balsa strips. My brother-in-law took a picture, but I have no idea where the actual original photos for that ended up. I've got a lot of projects that I have absolutely no clue where they went over the years. But
Yeah.
some that the one I put up for evaluation for the Master Builder Structures at the Brainerd convention, that Stuckham Glue Works.
Yep.
That one was a rebuild of something that I did in high school. So that was like a 40-year-old project that I completely lost track of and then redid. So, and then right now I'm doing that bridge project, which is I've been averaging about one major scratch build project per year. So
Great.
it's kind of slow going.
Well,
I'm starting
folks,
to look at some of the scratch building the car stuff now, and probably.
Yep. Well, you can see the progress that he's making at the modelers meet, and then it'll be entered in the contest at the regional convention. And Ken, you were talking that your layout's going to be open for the TLR convention.
I believe I was asked if it would be, and I said yes, because I always
Good.
enjoy having people come over and check it out and run trains, and that might even be part of that ops meet as well too in April. I'm not sure yet on that, but I'm open for both of them if people want to be part of that, or if they'll let me be part of that. I'm good to go on either one of those.
That's great. That's great. And Chris, you asked about upcoming events in Minnesota. Gosh, I guess I've got to get better at the calendar. You know, it's everybody's too busy. So
if you go to the grvs.org website, they've
Yep.
got a calendar on their homepage that lists all the upcoming shows in the area. So that might be one place to go real quickly
There you
if
go.
you just want to get a rough idea what's coming up. But
there you go. Good. Well, guys, I'm going to I'm going to end the broadcast, and just for my guests in the studio, you will stay here so that I can thank you profusely one more time. But I do appreciate everybody that's been here, chit-chatting with us. Please keep in contact with us, because you're what part of what makes this hobby so much fun is building this community. So until next week, we will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.
Hey,
Thanks.
Ken, I got one last thing before we go here. We are
Okay.
still looking for a presenter or the Thursday, February 9th
Oh, okay.
online Zoom meeting.
All
So if
right.
anybody out there has any prepared already, would be ideal, I guess. But if you guys can throw together something so we can fill some time at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
Everybody likes to see what you're doing. So
Yep. We like to have a presentation before we do the before we talk about the talk about what's on our workbench. So